The College Board, the group that gives your kids the AP tests and all kinds of other things with the SAT and, you know, the gatekeepers to the American dream. They're trash. We're going to talk about it tonight on the Eight Black Hands. Greetings, friends and family. It's another episode of the Eight Black Hands. It's Sunday night, and you know what that means. The father powered podcast is back on to talk about education. This week, we wanted to talk about the College Board, and for a good time now, we have been told that there was this fight between Ron DeSantis in Florida and the College Board regarding the contents of the African American Studies, the AP African American Studies course that Florida was rejecting because they said that it didn't have substantial educational value, and they also were saying that it might break the law in Florida, and the law being the kind of don't say black law or don't say education law in Florida. And what we had been told was that there was a lot of back and forth, but the College Board doubled down on its defense, saying that they don't change the course for specific governors like Ron DeSantis, and that they had omitted some things from the original concept of what was going to be the course because they were piloting it, and there were some things that weren't going to make it all the way through. Some of those things that didn't make it through are like Kimberly Crenshaw's her take on intersectionality. Information about the Black Lives Matter, other concepts that ran afoul of African American scholarship that falls into the category of CRT, or critical race theory. Didn't make it along, but the College Board said, don't fear, it's still in there. It's just not in the primary course. It's part of the optional things that you can draw in terms of resources. And everybody said, okay, well, you're still trash, but we're going to act like you're not as trashy as trash is. We're going to act like you're not complete garbage in the garbage disposal. We're going to act like you're not Spice One of the hip hop world. We're going to act like you're not Schoolie D of rappers. So we went with that story until this new story kind of popped up. And here we go again, the College Board's secret apology. And this is the Wall Street Journal. So it must be true. Anyways, in this story, this basically says that private emails show that the College Board wasn't being completely honest about their war with Ron DeSantis, and it wasn't really a war. They really were omitting things, and the august group of Black scholars that they had brought together to decide what should define Black studies were caught off guard with some of the things that were being pulled apart or pulled out of the course, because they weren't being consulted. It was being done behind their back, or so says these scholars in their private emails. Kind of what the hell? So anyways, if you want to be prepared for this show, what I would say to you is Google the College Board's secret apology. It's a story at the Wall Street Journal by the editorial board. It's an editorial, and pull it up, because we're going to talk about it tonight. So fellas, you have seen this article. And what say you? I mean, first of all, surprise meter. What's your surprise meter? Is it on 1 to 10? Like 1 being like COINTELPRO, all again, I told y'all, to 10 being I am shocked. I cannot believe that the College Board would do this. So 1 to 10, where's your shock meter?
1. 0, like -10.
Y'all so cynical. Y'all just so cynical.
We got a right to be cynical. Our people been persecuted. Our history been erased. Paraphrase PE.
Cynthia Rose says, is there a paywall for the Wall Street Journal? And I don't believe for this particular story there is, but there might be one. It's a good question. Google it. Let us know in the comments. I have
you got to register. Like it's behind a paywall, but you got to register.
You register and you can get in. So y'all read the article.
You can register. Yeah.
What sticks out to you about this that's important for us, that's instructive for us as a people to stay alert to and to pay attention to?
Bro, I'm caught in a dilemma here, right? Because here it is. I have 13 high school, about to be emerging high school seniors that want to take this course, right? And so they are eager about this course. I got staff members that are eager to teach this course and pilot it. And so I know philosophically for me, I think the College Board is bullshit. I wouldn't let I can't say that I wouldn't let my child because it's my school, but here's one of those things that you got to do as a leader. Sometimes you got to step back and you got to just let people like do the work that they want to do without having your personal views conflict with what's the greater good, right? So like I'm still in conflict with if this is the greater good for kids, considering how they went about doing this, right? So this is messy.
It's messy. Is that the version of it's complicated? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
All right, Sharif, go ahead, bro. I didn't mean to cut you off, man.
No, it's good. I mean, I think for me, it reminds me that we gotta like just have our own stuff, man, our own curriculum. We talked about this in the last Freedom Friday, like just like we the pullers, the merchants of our curriculum, man. Like you just can't trust these folks, man. And for them to give, have that kind of pressure and succumb to it, just says a lot. Like, like at what point do you, if it's your story, at what point would you erase part of your story? You know what I mean? And your parents and your grandparents, like what part of that would you say, like, hey, you know what, we'll erase this? And I just think like it's not the first time we've seen it. I think this time, this is a org that we've been really pushing. I mean, I remember when they were first talking about this, is that Teachers College, and there were some professors up there that were working on it. I know teachers who were working on it. I gave feedback on on earlier rounds about it. And so, to see, and just own your stuff, College Board. Like don't be lying and all this kind of stuff. You're gonna get outed. So just fess up. Say you were worried about those dollars, and you said, you know what, dollars or Black folks' history, like, oh, for them, I'm sure it was an easy choice.
I want to ask y'all a question though on this part that you just said, Sharif, about like us needing to have our own things. Absolutely agreed, 100%. We need to have our own curriculum, our own schools, our own lane of things. But when there is something that is the universal, like the main system, and we get treated this way within the main system, yes, one call could be for a reason we need to build alternative systems. But we also can't like cut and run from things like the College Board, been the College Board for all these years. And the moment they get to us and to our program, now the thing is going to be the thing that's going to blow them up. No. You stay exactly where you are. You keep doing exactly what you are, and you treat our studies along with all those others, AP German, AP European,
AP Latin studies,
AP Latin and all that type of stuff. Yeah. Don't let this be the thing that says, okay, if we have to do right by the Black folks, then all of a sudden we're not going to have a College Board no more. No. You keep doing it. You keep doing it.
Here's where
you treat ours right.
Here's where we're at a disposition, right? So we're at a disposition because when you look at GPAs, which a lot of colleges do, especially with them going away from the SAT and the ACT as a metric for college admittance, right? You see AP courses being weighted differently in high schools. And so now what you have is you have folks that have access to AP that are coming in with these 5.7 GPAs when you may have a school that does not have access to AP. So this is about access here. You may have a kid that's coming in with a 3.8 and a compelling story, right? And so if you're comparing apples to oranges in terms of like who you're letting in, this is just another way for folks to be gatekeeping in terms of black and brown college access, in my opinion.
But
go ahead, Robert.
Here's the thing, right? I feel like for a long time, I've raised this issue about the College Board, and people would act like I was crazy, right? Like I've never understood our.
Two things could be true.
So this is why we got an A in the NFL draft, and your team didn't. But I digress. Just a bit. I'll throw you on Twitter later on about that. But folks act like this is new. That like that in 2020 or whatever it was, they made $1.2 billion off of testing fees at the College Board. It's like some $1 billion number. Number one. Number two, what's the value of this AP test versus the rigor associated with IB, right? You work to take an AP exam. In IB, you learn the skills associated with reading literature. And for me as an educator, it's important to have the debate about College Board, and I'm fine with that. But it's also important to have it in an informed way, not just based on the fact that they kicked us to the curb and like, fuck the College Board. Why is Black people, do we need them to give us validation for our history anyway? Like, I don't get it. And so I'm not surprised. I am surprised that people are surprised by this, because I'm like, have y'all read anything about the College Board? But I think what happens is people get consumed by the attachment to AP and SAT, because for a while there was a push in secondary high school completion and how we evaluate schools about, oh, well, we need to look at SAT.
How many you offer?
What'd you say, Reef?
No, I was saying how many you offer and all the
how many you offer and all these other things. And that became a measure of school quality. And people lost sight of like, hey, like, why? Like, why? Because when you do that, you then become addicted to the product known as the College Board, as opposed to thinking about, well, why? Like, why is this so valuable? What about IB? Because I have found as a STEM educator that
you sound real bougie with this IB stuff, bro.
What'd you say?
And for the
people
real
bougie for
people listening who don't know what it is,
international baccalaureate. I'm assuming. I mean, do y'all do that in Philly, or it's only in Detroit?
I mean, there's some, but like everybody can't afford that. Number one, that's not a cheap program.
Hey, but sir, you know what is an affordable program in Philly? Community college. I'm hearing that the per pupil for community college in Philadelphia is like hundreds of dollars, not thousands, but hundreds of dollars for 3 credits. So those kids could go and they could take a 3-credit course and probably be more successful at Philadelphia Community College than they would be in taking the AP classes. And more colleges would probably take that credit than they would take a 3 on the AP exam, because 3s and 4s, they're not even really taking those at colleges anymore.
So I don't want to lose Robert's point though, like, because I don't agree with it.
Well, I mean, and Chris, one other thing for you to add to disagree about it. Yeah, a lot of their courses are more rigorous than what the typical class is teaching. So that's also a district. It's not just being addicted, where a district or principal is addicted to offer family saying like, hey, why aren't you offering these? They're more rigorous than the typical thing that's thrown in front of kids.
True. That's true.
But they don't have to be. But that speaks to Robert's point in terms of what we define what rigor looks like, right? And so we could look at what's being offered in an AP course and take that curriculum and make our own class and make it equally as difficult or even more.
You sound like the people in some ways that are against standardized testing.
Oh
no! Let me say. Let me finish.
Because I want to cut this.
Let me finish. So, the people who say in standardized testing, why do we use Pearson? Why do we use these companies? These companies make so much money. Why do we rely upon them? Their instruments aren't even the best. We could come up with our own.
But they never do.
We could figure out something totally different, whatever. Nobody ever does, really.
Ever.
And when they do, it's usually garbage. It's usually not standardized in a way that you could cut across many different districts, schools, states, and across the country to come away with some sort of meta understanding of what's going on in a lot of places, because there are 14,000 school districts in the United States. There's 100,000 schools in the United States. And this idea that everybody should willy-nilly start doing whatever they want. Now, that doesn't mean that you stay roped into something that is not a great product, right? It's not to say that you keep doing something just because you keep doing it, but NAEP has been NAEP for so many years now that we have longitudinal data now because of that, right? The SAT has been the SAT for so long, even with some changes, that there are some data things that we could get out of that across states and jurisdictions and across time. that we wouldn't have if we just start doing what people want to do with data, which is blow it all up and start, inventing new things all over the place. Now, listen, I'm trying to land the plane on a very narrow strip because I don't want us to be roped into something that's not good. I don't want us to be roped into something that is, objectively bad. But the SAT and most of the standardized tests are not nearly as bad as people say they are. They're not the end all of end all. Nothing ever is. And there are other ways to measure things. But the SAT has meant something for a long period of time, and everybody has taken it across a lot of different groups. And because of that, there's some meta things that we could get out of that data that I get nervous about when we talk about shifting left to right. It doesn't even mean, like, listen, Robert, to your point, at the end of the day, IB, Sharif is right. It's expensive as hell. And I need people, districts and others, to go look at what it costs to train teachers and to send them to them annual trainings that they go to for the IB thing, whatever. But I'm not against it because, listen, in the Twin Cities in Minneapolis, that became a thing. They said, we're going to put it in every high school, IB. It used to be in one high school. And they're like, no. If it's going to be in one high school, it's going to be in all high schools. Mm-hmm. So now all of the high schools now have IB. They also all have AP. They also all have college in the schools, which is the college classes you take, but you don't take them at the college. You take them in the high school. And They also have the reverse of that, which is PSEO, meaning if you do want to take it at the college, you can leave the high school and go take it. So they did all the things. They put them in for everybody. They're like, listen, no one is going to be more important than others. So now, if you're a student in that district and you're applying to a college that does the ATC or the ACT, I'm sorry, you're good. If they do the SAT, you're good. If they don't do any of those, you're good. If they prioritize IB, you're good, right? So it's a choice. Districts can make a choice to offer a lot of things to their students. Now,
but is that a cost? Is that a cost?
Right? Listen, you shouldn't be the one on this podcast to say that, because you and I live in some relatively not necessarily broke places. Though. These other two folks here live in places that are broke down.
No, sir. That guy lives in a healthy suburb in Virginia. In Virginia. Oh yeah.
Okay. No. All right. Well, he's no. He's always
Mr. Lower Marion right here. Mr. Lower Marion right here.
He's repping Detroit usually. I forget that both of these folks are repping cities.
Yeah, they rep, but they suburb.
They're not in them. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Right. Then so none of us then should be complaining, because you could do all of this in the places where we are. Right. You could do all these things. You could have all the things.
And
all the places
muted. We can't hear your trash talk.
Yeah, did you see him trying to throw the gang signs? Like, what gang? The chicken gang?
I said I'm not in Lower Marion for the 100th time. West Philly, baby. Y'all know what it is. Don't get it twisted. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Bro, I love the background, Reeve. I just love the fact that, like, you stepped up from like poverty adjacent to like you stepped into your leadership.
My beautiful bunker room is the exact same. I just got booted, but it looks the
like
exact
you get
same.
Booted often, bro.
Keeping that wood paint. Yeah, I mean, it's just gonna set up here. It's just easier and it's quieter a little bit.
Oh, okay. All right.
A little bit quieter.
But Chris, to your point. Yeah. Right? Like, let me revisit this. The thing that, and it's, I'm not arguing for or against AP or IB. What I'm saying is there should be options, right? And what happens if the rigor that's in AP and IB was just the rigor that was in teaching and how we teach young folks in schools? And in DC, there were moments where you didn't see as many AP classes in certain schools east of the Anacostia River, right? And there was a policy implemented by the chancellor at that time to establish a floor. And people got their draws all up in the bunches in certain parts of the city about it. Like, well, wait, what do you mean? Like, why are you doing this whole thing, right? And these are the neoliberal folks that were in the District of Columbia. Mm-hmm. And so I think that there is a healthy debate to be had about access to AP and or IB. Like that's one conversation,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
And certainly I'm not opposed to testing because I want to know whether my child can read or not.
That's facts.
So I'm not opposed to testing.
Academic that's not against testing. That's a man.
Well,
That's against the law.
So Rob is a different kind of academic, bro. He ain't Ed Fuller.
yeah, I'm not. I think it's crazy when I see these people online who are academics who are like, oh well, you know, we don't need any standardized tests. Well, like, yeah, but y'all are producing trash teachers, so like maybe y'all need another mechanism to determine if they should even get in. Like, what do we? Why don't you need a test? Like, what? Anyway, I won't get on my
testing's racist, bro. Get with the program.
Well, I mean, you're gonna get canceled. Chris, he's
So let me say this,
He
right?
deserve
So,
to be canceled for that one. I don't know where that came from.
so the alternative to standardized testing is teacher made assessments. And I make this argument all the time, and I'm waiting for somebody to prove me wrong. You got a teaching field that's 80% white. You mean to tell me that there ain't gonna be no structural deficiencies in terms of like how these people approach making tests? And if they're not checking their biases, which I'm sure that many of these lovely teachers are doing, right?
Mhm.
But also many of these lovely teachers are not doing that, right? So there's not going to be any kind of inherent biases that are associated with teacher made assessments.
You need to trust the 80%, brother. You sound like very.
See, I don't trust the other 20% of people. I don't trust the people that look like us. If we scrutinizing the system the way that we need to scrutinize it.
If we being serious, I mean, if we could be real honest about it, and this is, this will get me in trouble. But the one thing that the tests discriminate the most against is ignorance. I mean, so if they are discriminatory at all, if they're biased at all, they're biased against your ass not knowing the content. And not
That's true.
been taught. So I mean, we could talk. Oh my God! The tests are so racist.
Penalty.
The test.
I hope that was a flag she just handed you. A yellow flag.
The tests are so terrible.
She just gave him a yellow card. She came running down and gave him a yellow card.
The kids don't know what they're reading about. They don't know what they're reading about because they can't read. It's not because it's racist. It's because it's like it's
here for a second, sir.
Because there are letters.
There is racial bias.
There's racial undertones in standardized testing.
Show me an example.
If a kid can't see themselves, so first of all, right? If a kid can't see themselves in a test that you're giving them, if they're reading a passage that they don't have any kind of background knowledge of, right? So, for example, if you're telling me a kid that has been in the inner city their whole life, and you're asking them to take a standardized test that involves them making connecting context clues about being in a museum or being in a suburban setting, that would be beneficial to the
city, bro.
You said what?
We have museums in the city.
That's where the museums are, bro. And see,
I haven't seen a museum in a rural area yet. I'm sure there exists. You know what I mean?
Not a museum,
like at Gettysburg or somewhere, but like in general, like
something that informs it. Something that informs. Well, so to your point though, Reef, a kid could have. There could be museums in urban areas, but shit, a kid may not even ever get access to go into those museums based off of just their situation, right? And also, if you talk to some of these kids that are in urban areas in certain cities in the United States, and you ask them, you're like, have you ever been outside of the city? A lot of them will tell you, no, I haven't been outside of the city. And they can go their whole life without being outside of the city. And so now here it is, you have a test that is testing you based off of reading passages that put you outside of your city or outside of your setting, right? And so it might be hard for some kids to perform on that. Not to say that they wouldn't be able to perform if they could see themselves in the literature. It is.
I do want to push back a little bit. All right. So as a kid, we would take tests. I think outside of Mullen, South Carolina, we didn't travel outside of the city much. I'd have to think about it, but off the top of my head, that would be the traveling. If we stop at south of the border and we end up in Mullins, right? And so some of that is how kids are being taught, because you don't have to experience every single thing to answer a daggone question about So some of it is just straight up literacy. Some of it is context clues. But I would say that you know, as schools were, and I, you know, I know we probably need to hop back to the AP thing, but as schools,
No, we
as
don't.
schools were pushing, as schools were pushing to raise test scores, what they did was they actually undermined the efforts for kids to become smarter. Once they weren't using good sound reading strategies. We know that, but then two, they were cutting things that would give students access opportunities to learn about things outside of their realm of experiences, like history, social studies, science, right? Like writing classes. Like there were so many kids who weren't even taking writing classes. They weren't taking social studies classes. They were taking science once a week. Or there was some schools that were saying, hey, you'll take science this year and social studies the next year. You know, just like ridiculous things, which is this cumulative knowledge and access and this knowledge base that if you don't have it, like, yes, it shrinks what you have background knowledge on.
So I just want to, like, for y'all, just give y'all like example. This is a test question from Minnesota, right? So, you know, this is what I want.
Ray said you got to go to India to answer that question. If you ain't been to India, you can't answer. You can't answer the question.
And so what I want my people to do is stop repeating things that they hear other people say.
Bro, I'm not repeating anything.
No, I'm not.
I'm in the field.
You're not being original, like, because you're not being original.
Absolutely being original. Don't try to discount my lived experience.
You being like a derivative rapper, right? Like totally derivative rapper. Like you downstream several generations down.
You should be struck from the record.
This is what I want my people to do. Don't talk about the tests until you go look at them for yourself, because your states they publish samples. And this is so that parents can actually know. They actually don't just publish samples. They also publish explanations of things, whatever. So your states have to be pretty transparent about what's out there. Now, if you come up with the exact same feedback that you had before you looked at them, at least you looked at them and you confirmed what you're thinking about the tests. But the question I always tell people is go look at them and ask yourself the one simple question I tell everybody to ask yourself. Should my kid be able to do this at this grade? Right? Before you start talking about racial bias and, oh, my kid can't possibly do it because my kid's black, or, you know, the questions are white, or blah, 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 whatever. Somebody did say that. Like, yeah. No. Somebody literally said what I just said. So you may not have said it, but somebody literally said what I just said. Lots of somebodies, as a matter of fact, said what I said. And before you do that, look at a question like this and realize that I don't care whether you black, white, or whatever. This is not your lived experience necessarily.
Zoom in on the question. What does the question say?
You know, unless you're a small number of people. You know, this is a passage. It wants you to read the passage, and then it wants to ask you a question. Which sentence best describes the central character at the beginning of the story, right? That doesn't require you. If it requires you to do this right now, if it requires you to have background knowledge to do this, that's still a problem.
Okay.
It's still a problem if you need background knowledge to do what this question is asking you to do, which is to read this passage, which is numbered for you in these different spots.
Yeah.
And then answer a question about what you read.
Yeah.
It is a problem if your kid can't do that.
It is 100% a problem. I agree with that, right? But what many would say is that kids,
what many
would say is that kids are disinterested in that type of content because they don't see themselves in that. Right.
And them kids need to get over that shit. How many things I read this week? How many things I read this week? I didn't like
y'all follow. Many of the people that y'all follow, many of those doctors that y'all follow that push seeing yourselves in the curriculum, right? Like, why are y'all silent?
Listen, no, I'm not silent. I mean, you were talking. So this is what I would say. Now that you're pausing, I will respond to you. Yes, like a student should not, you know what I mean? A test is just like their experience for 13 years. Often they are erased. They don't see themselves. We talked about the window and the mirrors incessantly. It doesn't mean that every single question has to be about you. You can read about other people. I mean, that's the whole point. We can't say we want our students to be worldly and global and all these things, and also say, oh, they're never going to see, read, or hear. What I'm saying is, when we talk about the people, my village, when we talk about it, it's like, you know, don't start our history in enslavement. Like, know that the Greeks learned from black folks. Know that Egyptians weren't aliens, that they were from black folks, that they came up down the Nile from the south. They were black. No, make sure they know pharaohs had wooden picks in their hair. Like, so, you know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. Don't erase them. in their experience, and that where they don't see anything about themselves, their culture, or anything in in a test. Or every time it's talking about a person of color, it's some like, oh, the mate, like, we had to erase stuff out of the PA one, because every single time they were talking about a Latino, it was in some type of, oh, they were a maid, or they were a waitress, like every single time. And we're like, yo, you can't use this. This is ridiculous. So it was beyond like them not only seeing themselves, they only saw themselves because the people who looked at that, who were designing the test, they only saw Latinos in one way. They only see Black people in one way, right? So that's what we're saying, like making it more, just, so a kid isn't subjected to that throughout their educational experience, and centering like true history. I mean, we see this, right? Like the world's on fire because people are saying like, hey, Ruby Bridges experienced racism. So like, we see that kind of thing. And folks weren't teaching kids how to read. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like bottom line.
And the way that you are going to learn about more than yourself is by reading things that are about more than yourself, right? So it'd be nice for you to have some relevant material in your life that helps you understand yourself as you are reading, but the way you're going to need to stretch yourself, even what you just said, most of the young people that I know have never been to Mali or Timbuktu, but I want them to know about Mali and Timbuktu.
But that's the whole point, right? Like only white folks learn about, they're the only ones who don't have to learn about other folks in general.
My kids still haven't been to Mali or Timbuktu or Seychelles, which is the Garden of Eden for people that don't know that, right? Like they haven't been there. If they have been anywhere close to there, it's been through text. It's been through language and through reading, right? But I don't want to get too far afield, because now we are, I said the thing about the standardized testing, and we got far afield, and then Ray got me fired up, like to make a hot take, which is basically y'all need to stop saying all this stuff about the bias in the test, because I believe that the test can be biased, but I think the biggest bias that they have is your child can't read, right? Your child does not understand the content. And that is its own problem, aside from whether the tests are biased or whatnot, which they, I'm not going to ever argue that anything isn't. Y'all know I give racism certificates out all over the place. I write racism citations like a bad cop. I be all over the place.
Oh, no.
I've been racism citation. Let me give you a racism citation. I do it all over the place. So.
It's not just that, though. I mean, I think it's, yes, there's definitely some biases, and I said, like, I've been part of, Pennsylvania's, bias review for the state test, for years now. And I've always found it to be a really valuable exercise to go through all of them and just, flag the statisticians, the test creators, all of these folks, the editors, we just give feedback about it. That's one. I think the other thing about testing that I think is a challenge is you can't put people through hellish conditions for 13 years. And then the only thing that you're going to do is hold accountability around a test. Like there's no accountability about the kids' lived experiences in school, about the curriculum and the instruction that they receive, about the humanity that they experience, or lack thereof. And then just say like, hey, we're going to take a test. And this is what, like, how about in August or September 1, we have just as much fervor about their experience as we do in the summer when we get these test scores back. That's my piece. Like it has to be this whole comprehensive effort to ensure that students are being educated and that they're safe intellectually, culturally, emotionally, spiritually, blah, 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 blah. Right.
So, Reef, so what I'm hearing from Chris, right, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, because
I said I will. You said you ain't got to preface that. I got you.
You're handing things out, right? So because of you handing things out, I want you to hand this out. Think about who's teaching these kids for 13 years. So like while you're sitting there, you're scrutinizing these kids for not knowing, who's teaching them to know. And so that's where a lot of the bulk of the criticism comes from. Because if you're in a school system for 13 years and you can't decipher text and you can't decipher how to read and be able to figure out context clues, that doesn't all fall on the parents. That falls on the education system too.
Okay, I'm on one tonight. So okay, cool. What was the parent all them years? What was happening?
You blaming that on
the parent?
They ain't getting paid.
No, I'm just asking a question. I'm just asking a question. Bro, I just can't ask a question. Shit. All of human civilization is built on questions. Like, can we go to the moon? Like how much for the rice and the milk? questions. I'm just asking questions. So 13 years,
the parents
13 years you could not read.
Mhm.
13 years you get to 12th grade, right?
Yep.
Now listen, on another show at another time or whatnot, I'm gonna say something different. I've talked about you should graduate after 13 years. You should graduate capable of doing something that earns you a spot in the American mainstream.
Yeah.
Period. You have had every kind of professional in your life for those 12 years. You have had an entire middle class, college educated group of people who have lived off of your existence, and black bodies and black minds are the new cotton. I've said it a million times. So 100%. We have commoditized you. We have put you through this system, and all these people paid their rent. They paid their mortgages. They got their little cars and their little whatever else out in the suburbs, and they drove into the city to teach the Negroes every day. And they took that money and extracted it from those schools and took it back to their tax bases and put it into their schools and their places and whatnot.
Go ahead.
And
no, you want to do
what else have I said too? When you go to talk to the doctor with your black child or whatnot, the doctor is writing you a prescription, and when you look at the pen says Ritalin on it. Why does it say Ritalin on the pen? Because the big farmer that visited him 2 days before, that brought him that pen and all the other stuff that they bring him or whatnot, knows that your child is a commodity. Your child is $1 million child. There's entire industries set up for your child. Okay, boom, said it.
Yep.
Let's put that to the side now. Your child hasn't read for 12 or 13 years. Where were you?
Okay.
Where were you? What did you have going on?
So here's what we're discounting, right? We're discounting the traumas that are associated with parents.
Before that, we're discounting the grades. We're discounting grades. That's
no. Well, so Chris, you've mentioned this before in your own lived experience about the traumas that you have had in school, right? And so sometimes it could have the adverse effect. It could motivate you to be that parent that's going in to ask those questions, ask those pertinent questions in order to make sure that your baby is getting the education that they need. However, there's a counter to that, right? There's a counter narrative. The counter narrative is that it could turn you so much off to school to where you're putting blind trust in people that you shouldn't put blind trust in. And so we can't discount that. That happens, man. That's why people need therapy. That's why people need therapy.
Wait, Robert.
It ain't a bad word.
I guess I want to clarify. Try to get some clarification. So, Chris, what you are saying is there should be a level of accountability if you get to the end of 12th grade, you can't read, and parents need to be held accountable.
Is that's the whole thing? Oh yeah. I'm saying that.
So okay,
definitely saying
that.
I thought there was more. I thought you were gonna say something like
no. I'm building.
That's true. Yes.
Okay, so that's one part. But if the parents can't themselves read,
they can.
They can't.
But many parents and families can.
Some can't. Most do. Most can.
I'm not putting most on that.
I'm
putting most on it. You're not gonna tell me in this year of the Lord of 2023 that the majority of black parents can't read.
No, I'm not saying the majority.
I will tell you that if you look at the research, I'm not gonna do that. I don't like doing the look at the research thing. Yeah, go ahead.
I would not limit it. I would not limit to black parents. I would say Americans in general.
But this is a show where we talk about our people on this show.
The reading levels are shocking.
No, but we talk on this show. We're talking about our own
I'm just
people.
saying, we're just talking about.
But Chris, like the reading levels,
our families will be included in that, bro.
Right.
They would be, but I mean, like on this show, we're like specifically concentrating on ours because other people are cleaning our clock. Other groups are cleaning our clock. I'm putting it back on Robert because I know he has something to say and I want to put him on a hot spot. What you got to say, bro? Come on, Wu-Tang forever.
I mean, based on what we know about statistics, right? There are probably about 25 to 30% of black adults in the United States who are considered to be low literacy, right? And that is probably dated based on my last recollection of writing about just black families, right?
What'd you say the percentage was?
It's between 25
What'd you
and
say
30.
The percentage was?
It's about 25 to 30%, but that's probably dated. So it may be higher or lower. That's probably 8 years.
That sounds about right.
And so based on that, Chris, that's a quarter of black families right, that aren't literate, which means that when their child comes home with homework, and keep in mind, state budgets haven't expanded supporting out of school time funding in a way that allows that support to happen. What happens? Like, how is that parent who's just trying to go from day to day to day? They can't read themselves. Like, what do you call that?
Well, I call it a bad statistic first. In 2019,
I mean, that
the
just-
African American literacy rate was 87% compared
Where
to 90%
are you getting that
white.
from?
So,
Where's it from?
see, now this is what we're gonna do. This is what we're gonna do. You're gonna turn into Chris Rufo all of a sudden. You're gonna turn into Chris Rufo.
But Chris, is that for families, adults? Is like, what does that mean?
That
Where you
means
get
that
that
the literacy rate, the literacy rate of African Americans is at an all-time high. And if we were to have Ivory Tolson on this show, he would tell us stop using scientific racism against ourselves. Things are actually better for us than we think it actually is.
Oh,
not
agree.
all of us are in trouble the way that people awfulize us to be. Our people can read more than we say that they can. Our kids could be reading more than they could read if they have more people, adults in their lives reading to them. More adults in their lives could read to them. It is not necessarily to let the school system off the hook.
But Chris,
the school system is in trouble.
Chris,
Yes,
that's different.
You know,
that you're arguing about an argument of having more adults in their lives helping them to learn to read is different than the family argument, right? Because we're talking about extended family. We're talking about community.
But it's the same. No. Let me clarify. Let me clean up my point, though. Your family is your first line of defense, and I think that we awfulize those people that we call their family. The thing that we say about their family constantly, first of all, I was in social services for many years. I worked with families on TANF systems for many years. I'm not talking out of school of anything I didn't know about, like people on government assistance, working with them every single day. And I learned more from them than they learned from me. I'm just going to be like really clear with you. I was two feet ahead of them in terms of the struggle when I was in those jobs doing that work. And these people are not the awfulized group of people, first of all, that we make them out to be. Now, I know a lot of people watching this, school counselors and others, are going to tell you the worst of the worst. And I had this one family that X and blah, 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 blah. Listen, all the years that I was working in those systems with those families, there was a lot I actually think to celebrate about them. It is not that they don't have a struggle. It is not that they didn't have some learning needs themselves. It is not that when we signed them up for some of the workforce programs and others, they didn't struggle with some of the tests or whatever. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying they're without any trouble. I am just saying that more of us are capable of doing for our kids when the school system is absolutely crap wherever we are. So I said this about Baltimore. When it came out that Baltimore had all those students that were in schools that had 0% proficiency in math. I said, listen, I'm usually one who beats up on the school system, but I know Sonia Santelias is running that system and trying to do a lot for the kids of Baltimore and is doing a lot of blocking and tackling. And when you have 0% proficiency, that is not just an indictment on Sonia Santelias and the school system.
No, it's not.
That is an indictment on every adult in Baltimore, period, because 0% means ain't shit happening for anybody.
I agree.
Right?
I agree 100%.
Right. 100%. And that's the only point I'm trying to make here is like, listen, we can, you're not going to get disagreement with me about the schools not doing all that they should be able to do. But that conversation is going to run its course for some people who are going to look at us and go, oh, you're going to just keep blaming the school though? Like none of your kids can read. None of your kids can do nothing. And all you got in your little arsenal of pushback on that is, but somebody else,
Got it. I agree. I agree with that.
Parents send the best that they have. I was told that by my mentor teacher coming in 2003. She said, parents send you the best that they have. And so when she said that, it made me think, right? It made me think critically about punching down, made me think critically about blaming parents, right? Like from then on, and that was my first year, and I'm glad I got that learned lesson from her. I don't awfulize parents because I know that they're doing the best that they can, the majority of them. Right now, you have those rare instances in which you have some ancient people. I grew up in an ancient household some of the time, right? And so I understand that, like people.
What's that mean, bro? Say what that means.
what ain't shit, like people that ain't doing nothing in order to try to help your growth intellectually, mentally, physically, whatever. They just there, right? So like I've grown up in situations like that to where it just wasn't beneficial. The adults around me wasn't beneficial to me in terms of my growth and development. But you know, that's where that grit argument comes in. That's where that motivation that you need to have as a person. But that, you know, again, you know, it goes into the argument of, is that a learned behavior or is that inherent, right? So like, I don't know. This is a tough one.
I mean, this is, you know, I hate it when people say things over and over again because just everybody says it. Like two things can be true. I hate when people say that because, you know.
But two things can be true.
Things can be true. What are you talking about?
That's why I hate it though, because it's kind of like, duh, like 4 things can be true, 8 things can be true. Why do we keep saying 2 things can be true?
Because you said
things can be true.
It's usually about a specific argument, though. It's not about like everything.
It's acknowledging the fact that hey, you put together a good counter argument, right? Like, you know, everybody can't be idiots.
Well, here's my
it also means that there's nuance and that you have to embrace the nuance.
There we go.
There's no nuance when you're illiterate, but I will say this much about the 2 things that can be true.
That's
the 2
true.
things that can be true is your school system could be absolute trash and people in those systems could not be doing all they should be doing for you. Yeah. And you could be teaching your kids more than you're teaching them. You could be utilizing the services that you do have in your communities to do something for kids. And if you can't, the rest of us are still not off the hook. I'm on the hook for like, listen, if you have nieces and nephews or if you have cousins or you have anything, blah, blah, none of us are off the hook. If, you know, if one of us is illiterate anywhere, all of us is in trouble, right? So I take responsibility for the 0%. I said this in my video, for the 0% of Baltimore kids, I take responsibility for that. That's partially my fault. Even from where I'm sitting right now, I could have given some money to somebody in that city that is working directly with young people and youth and whatnot, blah, blah. I could do a lot of things I'm not doing right now. So don't even let me just put it on parents. All of us Black people, if you listen to what I'm listening to right now, there should not be an illiterate Black person anywhere in the United States in the good Lord's year of the 2023, period.
Bro, I paid taxes in Baltimore. I paid taxes on about 3 houses in Baltimore.
And here comes a Republican. Talking about the taxes,
and I don't even live there, but I would pay more if I had to in order for kids to get a quality education.
And now he just lost his Republican status. Now he is back to a Democrat.
He wouldn't pay no more money.
Right. I'm definitely right. I'm capping.
Yeah. All right, y'all. Listen, I wanted to get back to this because I did have a very specific question. We were talking about the African American studies. I think we may have talked about this once before, but do you guys agree with the things that were at issue being cut? Because supposedly these are things that not even all Black people agree should be part of canonical thinking. So one of them being Black Lives Matter as the movement. Where do y'all fall down as that being part of a canonical part of what should be taught to Black people and advanced young Black people, be taught as a precursor to higher ed level African American studies?
Of course it should be taught.
Whoa. I don't know about that. I don't see myself in the Black Lives Matter movement. And so I feel like there's some erasure that has happened in that movement that does not necessarily speak to me. And Chris, I would love for you to speak on this because you witnessed the beginnings of this movement and how it transcended to erase Black men.
Can I wait a minute before you get into all of that? The idea of a course, whether you're in it or not, that's not the purpose of a course. The course is to develop critical thinking. The course is to actually engage and wrestle with things that you may not agree with and challenge yourself and produce better, right? Not, oh, I'm not in that. And so I'm not going to like, that means you should erase most of the curriculum because you ain't in most of it, bro. You know what I mean? So like, that doesn't make, I mean, that is illogical. This is why, this is one of my things. I don't know
about illogical.
This is why schools should actually teach logic. So then people won't come to say like, I don't agree with that, so erase that. You sound like a Black DeSantos. Like, I don't agree with that, so erase it. That doesn't make sense. They should actually be. So maybe it's like, hey, here's the Black Lives Matter movement. Was that a phenomenon or not? Was it a thing or not?
So
Wait a minute, just say yes or no. Was it a
I'm not
phenomenon?
used to you yielding insults like that.
That's not it.
Black DeSantos. That's like me typing to you in the chat.
Reach. That's a reach. Yes.
Yeah,
it's still
bro.
Funny.
I'm not
it's still funny.
Yo, that hurt my feelings, bro.
I'm sorry.
It really did.
Listen.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that therapy is going to help you, though, even though your
yes.
feelings were hurt.
Yes.
Even though you're feeling very fragile.
Yeah.
Even though you're feeling fragile and attacked and pressured. I know therapy is going to do right by you. I know
it will.
But Ray,
Yeah.
You're saying to me that as a leader of a school,
I'm not speaking as a leader of a school. I'm speaking as Ray the Republican on the podcast. That's 1/4 of the two hands.
Okay, so go with that. You're saying as a thoughtful Black person, that if we're teaching history, of Black people, that Black Lives Matter as a movement has no place in how we tell our story.
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is partially what I'm saying is partially what Reef was saying, right? And so, as a person that's in that movement, I get the opportunity to critique that movement and talk about it in a way in which it made me feel, in a way in which it centered me. I'm not saying that it should be eliminated so other people can't share their opinions as to how it made them feel. No, I'm not saying that.
Backpedaling that I've seen in a while. That looks like a little
backpedaling. It's not backpedaling at all. I'm just
like moonwalking.
Okay, so let me ask this. I am taking it though that the majority of the podcast right now is saying that BLM, Black Lives Matter, should be a canonical part of the course, and by that I mean, there's a part of these courses where it's still in there, but it's part of the resource where you can pick or choose it whether you want to or not, versus being in the set parts of the course. There are parts of this, like if you look through all the different sections of the course, there are parts that are set that you have to cover. And there's parts, if a teacher wants to go and draw things from a different bank, they have this different bank of topics. So the canonical part, do you think Black Lives Matter?
Yes.
So we're saying yes, mostly as a group.
So to clarify, I hear you now. You're saying like the core, but then there's other like additional resources in the
there's a separate bank. There's a separate bank of things where teachers individually can draw from for inspiration to do other lessons or whatever. But there's a part of it. There's a stream of it, section by section by section, that isn't optional. It's the core part of the course.
Yeah, I would just say for me, it would be hard to determine that without actually looking at like what is listed right now. You know what I mean? Because there's I mean, like Black AP course could be, you know what I mean, like 10,000 pages, right? And so it is a matter of like, okay, what can fit? What's across 180 days? What's the depth of it? What's the additional material? So like, I would have to look at it to see like, okay, where, you know, what's taken its place. You know, kind of thing, you know.
All right, we're mostly there.
Reparations.
So the next one, let's go to the next one though, right after that, which is you know, not going to be less controversial, which is LGBTQIA plus. See, they even didn't even include all of the letters here. Studies, and it was labeled in a section called Black Queer Studies. And had writers who actually could speak to or had scholarship around Black queer studies. Again,
you can't have an AP course. You can't have an AP course and not have that.
Well, DeSantos, you know, your guy in Florida down there, was basically saying, well, Black people don't even agree with this one. Like, you know, I'm sure
there are some people in the Black community that are homophobic.
I'm sure he was talking to some Black pastors down there in Florida, right, who went through them Florida schools and came out the other end confused. But I mean, it is true that he was raising an issue of. So I'm asking the podcast. I'm asking y'all. This would be one of the things excluded from the canonical part of the course. What would you say?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Now, see, Sharif's a little quiet.
No, I mean, I was
quiet.
I was stuck on this second bullet. Like, you know, like for me, anything with like AP, you know, we had several AP courses and, you know, like both in the math, the sciences, things, you know, we started off with 10th graders in human geography.
Where?
Anyway, the only high school that I worked at, Shoemaker. You know, 10th graders would start off with human geography. and then go in. And my thing is like, just from my analysis, again, not looking at the entire list, not including the, some of the conflicts and other things in a course at a college level course, like that means you're missing the mark, So for me, it's not a matter of just like, oh, Black Lives Matter, this is what happened in this year. It is, what is the history of similar type of movement. That's how I would approach a curriculum. Like, what are the similarities between I Am a Man protest and Black Lives Matter protest? Like, what are the similarities amongst that? How do you talk about the civil rights, and then like who was erased in the civil rights, narrative, right? And then you're talking about all the people who were erased.
That's right.
Right. And so, you know what I mean? Like, so reparations is not just like the move now with Coates. It's like, what is reparation? What does that always look like? And who received initial reparations when enslavement ended? Right. So like, for me, it is always the thread that goes through, and you're sharing all the different things. It's less about, hey, there's some things that are so significant as a point of time, and this happened, this exploded, blah, blah, blah. Then that's there for that moment. Most of the things, when you're dealing with a history course, you're talking about what threads through and all the different ways that it showed up.
Now, to be clear, this is African-American studies, but it's not African-American history. Exactly the same. It's not the exact same.
It's not the exact same, but it is.
You guys were asking before about what the units are. So here are the units. So the first unit is around the origins of the African diaspora, and you have units within that particular unit. The next one is around freedom, enslavement, and resistance, and you have the same thing. These are the things in 8 weeks you're going to learn in that. The practice of freedom and movements and debates. And again, each one has these units within the unit that you're going to learn. So if you think about like what we were just talking about, you're going to have the Black Power movement, Black Pride movement, Black women's voices
identity.
in society and leadership.
That's right.
Diversity within Black communities or whatnot, identity, culture, and connection. But even having that, though, you're going to remove some things from everything that I just said, right? So you're going to remove things around the Black Lives Matter movement specifically, and LGBTQIA plus community issues you're going to remove, or Black queer studies specifically. And you're removing the scholars that are most known for those particular, that have done the scholarship in those areas. Also, you're going to remove mass reparations, mass incarceration, and the Black
you
feminist.
Can't talk about enslavement without talking about, even because it's history.
Right.
Studies includes history and current things, but it's still like, what connects it all, and what were people doing to analyze it, to critique it, right? Like you're studying critiques of these things. You're studying champions of these things. You can't talk about enslavement without talking about current day mass incarceration. Like it doesn't make sense, for a college level course to say this doesn't matter.
Here's listen, and this is gonna get me in trouble with the friend of the show, David Johns. And David Johns, if you're watching this right now, I know we're gonna tussle on this, and you're invited to come and participate. You're my brother. I love you. So Jamoke here put Bayard
exactly, Jamoke.
Rustin versus MLK, and I don't know if versus
and against the women, versus not, but just all the connections with it, right?
There's some unproven theories about whatever.
No, they're not unproven. I mean, and here's the thing, like, you can't talk about, so with Bayard Rustin is a great example of somebody who was like a fascinating, brilliant architect of the March on Washington. I've said this like a million times, like we got 200, not we, but the Black people got 250,000 people to March on Washington with the telephone. Not a smartphone, a dumb phone with a rotary phone where you had to like do the dial and blah blah blah. You know how many times it takes to dial 250,000 people? Anyways, women did that. Men didn't do that. Women did that. I just want to know, when I say we got 250,000 people, blah 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 blah, the backbone of all of that was women. So as we're doing queer studies, and as we're doing, this is where the intersectional thing, removing intersectional, is going to become such a problem. Is because, yes, Bayard was a queer man who was actually added something that we don't talk enough about in the civil rights. When we do all the civil rights redux, we get very reductive about, Dr. King, charismatic leader, did everything. just stood up there, said I had a dream, and all of a sudden, boom, woo, we had civil rights, whatever. Stop it, people. Anyways, but then, we erased people like, the queer man who was behind much of the organizing, but we also erased the fact that queer man actually made the women march in the back because he didn't think that the women should be in front on anything. And as a matter of fact, to get one woman on the program to speak even became a big deal because there was so much misogyny within these folks. So this is where, and this is not normally listen,
two things can be true at the same time then, right?
5 things can be true. When you talk about intersectionality, 10 things can be true. See, this is where y'all 2 things can be true is wrong. Intersectionality says 15 things can be true, right? Let one of them be disabled, right? Now we didn't have a queer person, women were put to the back, all the men were in front. What kind of men? All light skin. The dark ones were put downstream on a lot of the stuff that they did. All of them were middle class and upper middle class. None of them were the ones that weren't respectable in terms of speaking and how they would speak and say things or whatnot, right? So many different things could be taught in this course from that perspective. So they removed intersectionality as one of the concepts from the course, which now I didn't think anything about it at the moment. But now the more we talk about this, the more I'm thinking is they've done damage to this course. They've done real damage to it. It still looks good. What I just showed you, all those units, if you came out learning all that stuff, you would come out pretty good, I think. I still think you wouldn't come out as good. And Robert, IB's not going to cure that. Come on, man. Really?
No. I'm not suggesting that IB is better than AP. What I'm saying is I don't often hear of the debate or a conversation around AP and IB coexisting in schools to give kids multiple pathways. It's almost like having CTE programs to give kids multiple pathways. I believe you need to give them multiple pathways because the construct and framework for AP and IB are very different. And so I think it's okay to, as Naomi said, that 2 or more things can be true. Okay. And in that case, 2 or more things can be true when it comes to whether it's IB and AP in our schools so that our young folks can have well-rounded experiences when it comes to these types of courses. Now, there is ambiguous research on whether just not to go away from AP, but just in terms of College Board's monopoly on the SAT, as to whether that's an actual accurate predictor of how well someone will do in college, right? Yeah. I think as a entity, the College Board has always been deeply problematic. So as I stated at the beginning, I ain't surprised by them fumbling and bumbling this because they fumble and bumble all the time. I don't get it. Why we mad?
You mad. You big mad.
Yeah, you mad. It's because of you. Well, listen, I know we're coming to the end of the show. I would love to wrap up with any of your final thoughts on this particular issue. Are you mad? Do you think we should be mad? Should we be? What should we be doing? Because we're on permanent outrage. We're in a permanent outrage machine. So what? What do we do now? Just be mad, or
All right. Well, I blame all this on our HBCUs.
Ooh,
damn. They should be. This is the curriculum that should be doing.
Yeah, I was about to say, damn. Yeah,
HBCUs. This is your fault.
What?
You actually teach curricula, and there's no reason why every HBCU should not have a school attached to it. There's no reason why HBCUs should not. Somebody should actually have the courses for college credit that are pushed down into high schools. That can be done. Gerald Dessis wrote a whole curriculum on his own about 8th grade social justice, analyzing youth activists from South Africa to the Americas. That could be in every middle school around the country. And he's just a singular young Black man that put it together. It's super quality work. There's no reason why HBCUs couldn't come together. And I get it. They're under-resourced. Shout out to the ones in Pennsylvania. I hope we win this lawsuit. I'm a Cheney alum. I believe in that. I don't know it's not happening today. I'm just saying, like, it should be happening.
It should already
And
happen.
it should be a national. It should be in. Listen, it should be in the classes. I'm not talking about like little boutique stuff. We got enough boutique stuff. It should be as a this is. Oh my gosh! See, this is the problem with SATs. Like, they're right. This is the problem. You know what I mean? Somebody has to be like, "What's a boutique?" Like, you know what I mean? Anyway.
You did say it in a kind of a southern way for a Philly dude, you know, boutique. You said it like T-bone steak. You know?
It should be. It should be. We shouldn't even have to. Schools shouldn't even have to talk about College Board when you're talking about like this course. It should be a stand. Like, you can't go to any site and say, "Oh, as a principal, I know where to go to purchase my AP course, my AP level course from which HBCU, which group of HBCUs." That should be a done deal, and not now, not in 2023. It should have been there.
This is what I'm gonna say on that point is. Okay, maybe it's taking our HBCUs a little time to get online fully with the rest of the world, and they're gonna get there. It's gonna happen. But there is this thing called Reconstruction.us, which is, I mean, you know, it's the Black Con, it's like our own academy. And if you go there, you can learn everything from spades to advanced, you know, African American history things.
Stop it.
So, you know, it's one of those things when the other people aren't doing it. What might happen at some point is a Reconstruction type idea might get bought by the HBCUs. They might say, what we need is some people to go out and pioneer some of these things and help us build the platform. And listen, you know, Micron or somebody else might come in with some money, not in Minnesota, but you know, they might come in with some money somewhere, blah, blah, whatever, and, you know, build the platforms, bring the talent, bring the people, bring it all together. And boom, well, God, now you all of a sudden have modernized HBCUs doing something more than bands.
I think we should invest in something like that.
And we is who?
Me, I'll put money in right now today because I know it's worth it.
I think
anybody that every month brags about having 3 houses in Maryland, they should.
So first off, right? I don't brag about nothing.
Nobody said anything about you. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
Sensitive. But that therapy's not working, bro. That therapy's not working. That therapy's not working.
All right, so therapy, man. We're gonna give you the screen. What's your final word on this specifically? On the topic of the show.
No.
Yeah.
You're not handcuffing me, bro. My final
Robert, you next, bro. Robert. Final word on this show that we're talking about tonight.
I actually am going to end based on Chris's comments about HBCUs and building out something like this. And it would be a good conversation to think about the work that Kaya Henderson is leading with Reconstruction. I know there's some stuff going on with UNCF and HBCUs. I've been in some conversations. Oh, there we go.
Yes.
There have been some conversations that I've been in with some HBCUs, in particular around STEM. So I do think that we need to figure out how to do that. And I certainly would love to engage anyone on the hands or in the audience who would want to sit down and figure that out. So we will not play Tonk. We will play spades. That's it.
God. We will play pity pat. All right, Raymond, here we go. Let's go with here. Ladies and gentlemen,
there's no evidence that suggests that shirt is working for him. So.
Not at all. The spacing is even wrong. The spacing is wrong. I mean, look how far therapy is from all the other words, right? Like, it's just like spaced all out, like. Hey, anyways, it looked like the dude from Saw wrote the shirt. But let's do this. All right, it's on you, Ray.
Yeah. So first and foremost, therapy is not a bad word. Secondly, tomorrow night, 8 p.m., I'm having a podcast with Adonica Dugan. That's going to be dope. Pull up. All right. So with regards to the College Board, so I think the College Board is capped. I think that schools should invest in IB, should invest in partnerships with community colleges And there's also college programs that allow for the high school teachers to be trained and that be associated with college credit as well. So I've given you 3 different alternatives to receive college credit in your high school without having to do AP. And even with all that, I'm still doing AP.
Yeah. You know what? I forgot. I do want to mention this. I meant to mention it earlier, Chris. I do want to shout out. Y'all brought it up, and good looking out for bringing it up. I do want to shout out Community College of Philadelphia. You know, they have, I don't even remember how many, you know, courses that they offer high school students in Philly with the Octavius Catto Scholarship that the city invests in. You know, like so many students can get, you know, that free access and basically almost an associate's degree, you know, from community college. My mother's graduating class, fully support them, and looking forward to that, you know, continuation of students having early access and pathways through CCP.
Well, y'all see, y'all said something about HBCUs, and they jumped in these comments real quick, try to snatch y'all up.
Listen, I wasn't you know, I don't even have hair, and they were snatching my wig, so I was just like, leaving it alone. I was like, that's Sharif. That's all Sharif. He got a lot of hair for them to snatch, not me. Leave my head alone. Come after that head. This is so. Listen, this
What's
is
your final thought?
So my final thought is this. I'll take it from the Bible. From the book of
Ecclesiastes.
The book of Ecclesiastes, you know, is the book where it talks about there's a time and place for everything. You know, there's season for everything within its season. And you know, we said tonight several times that like 2 things can be true, right? We can correct the system and challenge the system when it's getting it wrong, and we can also build autonomous systems for ourselves in parallel. Black people have always had to be inventive. Marginalized people and colonized people everywhere on the globe have always had to play more than one game at one time. That has been like the invention. When you are beneath a system that is making you fight for your rights or fight for yourself and struggling in every direction, you can't leave anything off the table, whether it's in the main system or outside of the main system. So when it comes to things like the College Board, it is true in my mind that there is a season to build your own knowledge. We need to be building Black educational capital. We need to own the means of education for ourselves. I say it all the time. Let's keep saying that. And you know, people like Sharif and Robert and Ray, they are all participating in the contribution to building the Black knowledge base that creates Black educational capital, the human pipeline, the talent, the knowledge, the resources, the infrastructure, the money, the philanthropy. All of it is tying together in the work that 3/4 of the 8 Black hands are working on, and all the people that we're connecting to, including the people that are in the comments tonight, are paying in one way or another. They're contributing to that thing. And at the same time, our kids are within a system that we have to constantly always address and challenge to when they are getting it wrong. The College Board has been the College Board for a long time. The SAT has been at the SAT for a long time. Blowing it up right now because it's not getting it right with us only means that when people finally get around to doing the Black part of things is when they're going to go out of business, right? And I don't want to set that trend. No, you staying in business. You're going to keep doing AP European history. You're going to keep doing AP German history and politics. You're gonna keep doing all that AP other history stuff or whatnot, and you're gonna do ours, and you're gonna get it right. And no, you're not gonna bend to racist governors who want you to pull the most effective parts of it and put in their parts of it. Like we didn't talk about that tonight. DeSantis wanted to put in Black conservatives, right? And not the real Black conservatives necessarily like Booker T. Washington, but the fake ones like Tim Scott and, you know, people like that who basically can't put 2 sentences together that don't sound stupid. It's not going to happen. So my final word on it is not just 2 things can be true at once, 15, 20, all things have to be true at once. We are one-legged men in an ass-kicking contest. We got to kick asses in every direction. And it might be in the main system, in all of these systems. And I agree with the brothers with everything that they said tonight. AP isn't the end of the road. It's not everything. Neither is anything else that we would propose, whatever. But we do need to put pressure on them when they do wrong. College Board is doing wrong. They're being real trash right now and real trashy. And they lied to us. And my final word on all this, because Sharif knows some of these people, I know some of these people. The Black scholars that worked on this deserve better. They don't deserve to put all their work, their time, their energy, their investment, their entire lives. They have put their lives into studying us and our people, only to be treated as if they were back end characters in a grand play, because some stupid governor down in Florida is racist as hell and doesn't want the children of Florida to grow up to be smart people. So that's my final word. This has been another episode of the 8 Black Hands. It's Sunday night, and as always, we appreciate y'all for giving us your time, your energy, your thoughts, your input, jumping in the comments, giving us a hard time, telling me when I'm right and the fellas are wrong. We appreciate that, as always, every week. Let's keep that up. Keep that energy up from show to show. If you really want to help us out, share the show. Wherever you listen to the show, subscribe to it. Wherever you listen to it, leave comments. And also, if you can give us a rating if you are listening to it on podcast, we would greatly appreciate it. Let's make it a communal learning opportunity.